Shalom. First, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakah Double honors to the apostles, bishops, and elders of the great millstone, from whom I learned this truth. Shalom to the 144,000 elect. I am Mayakala. And the name of this one is going to be Samsung or Sampson. And I just have a few precepts that I wanted to bring out because of this video that I came across. It's called Before Apple and Samsung: The Hidden History of the Black Inventor Behind the First Cell Phone, or so-called black inventor. And this is not a very long video, but I do want to play it in its entirety. It's about 9 minutes. And then I have a few precepts that I want to bring out. And just to show you how the earth is given into the hands of the wicked, and how these wicked control who can take control or take ownership of their own inventions, and who's in the power and in the position to be able to take ownership of something that they didn't invent. And in this particular case, happens to be the cell phone. All right. And I do want to say this is fair use. Fair use. This is just for edification purposes. And I'm going to go ahead and start this.
Join us on Patreon and become part of our journey to uncover history's untold stories. Your support helps us create in-depth content, bring hidden narratives to life, and keep history alive for everyone.
The story of modern communication is often told through the gleaming glass of smartphones, the sleek lines of wireless towers, and the voices that travel across oceans in an instant. Yet behind every convenience lies the often overlooked genius of inventors whose work reshaped the world. When one thinks of the invention of the cell phone, many minds jump immediately to corporate names like Motorola or to Martin Cooper, who famously made the first handheld mobile call in 1973. But what is rarely remembered, or sometimes deliberately forgotten, is that years before Cooper's public demonstration, an African-American inventor named Henry Thomas Sampson Jr. laid the crucial foundation that made wireless cellular communication possible. His pioneering invention...
He means to say an Israelite. This man appears to be an Israelite, and based upon the things that took place with his inventions, you can see some of the curses affect him, which is what prompts me to say, other than appearance, that this man appears to be an Israelite.
The gamma electric cell opened the doorway for the creation of portable wireless technology. Without Sampson's breakthrough, the first mobile phones may never have been realized in the form we know them today. To understand the magnitude of this story, one must step into the hidden corridors of American history, where black ingenuity was often buried beneath layers of systemic neglect, erasure, and stolen credit.
Now he said erasure and stolen credit. So I just want to stop it right there and make a comparison here. Like I just spoke about the curses. This is Deuteronomy chapter 28. In verse 39, it says, "Thou shalt plant vineyards and dress them, but shalt neither drink of the wine or gather the grapes, for the worms shall eat them." So I wanted to bring that out just because of what he just said. Although I'm making a comparison with the work that was done physically in the fields by our ancestors, the Israelites, during slavery, you can see that the effects still linger on, and are lingering on at this time. And I believe this is probably around 60s, early 70s, where this inventor, Mr. Sampson, invented the links and the things that led up to the invention or the use of the cell phone. So even though he had brought this forth and made it possible for the furthering of the cell phone, he was, because of the time and because of the wicked that were in control, they would take credit. He wouldn't allow him to take credit for his own inventions. So he didn't get to reap the fruits of his own invention. I'm going to go to Haggai chapter 1 and 6. All right, and it reads, ye have sown much and bring in little. Ye eat, but ye have not enough. Ye drink, but ye are not filled with drink. Ye clothe you, but there is none warm. And he that earneth wages to put it into a bag with holes. So, just for the simple fact that this brother was bringing out inventions that he wasn't being allowed to be able to take credit for, you know that he didn't get the proper earnings that was due to him, just because of the wicked being in control and being in positions to be able to take ownership of his labors and his work and take credit for his invention. I'm gonna let it continue to play.
This is the story of the black inventor who, long before the age of Apple and Samsung, created the technological spark that lit the way to the very first cell phone prototype. Henry Thomas Sampson Jr. was born in Jackson, Mississippi in 1934 into a segregated America that offered few opportunities for black children to dream beyond the strict boundaries of systemic inequality. Yet from an early age, he displayed a fascination with science and mechanics. His curiosity was nurtured by parents who, despite the limitations imposed by Jim Crow laws, encouraged him to pursue knowledge. Sampson excelled academically, eventually enrolling at Purdue University, where he earned a degree in chemical engineering in 1956. For many black men of his generation, higher education was a nearly impossible hurdle, but Sampson's perseverance carried him further. He went on to earn a master's degree in engineering from the University of California, Los Angeles, and ultimately completed a PhD in nuclear engineering.
So you heard him say that at this time, this was extremely difficult for a so-called black man to be able to go on and get a higher learning degree at this time. But this is what you see it, and what you're hearing is that this is the Most High allowing this to go forth so that this man would be able to lay the groundwork for these devices that we use today. These devices are very important. Even you can see that's what I'm on right now. I'm on a cell phone, making use of what this man in previous years laid the groundwork for, because this is the Most High at work. All right. And he was making it possible for the brothers, the Israelites, Hebrew Israelites of today, to be able to, once they come to realize and know who they are, to bring forth this information using these devices. All right. And you're going to see that these devices are going to go out of use. They're going to be obsolete because of some further developments that the Most High is going to bring forth through Esau, through the wicked. All right. But I'm going to let this continue to play.
At the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign in 1967, becoming the first African American in the United States to achieve such a distinction.
Salakia.
While much of Sampson's professional life was dedicated to the field of nuclear energy, it was his work with energy conversion and radiation that placed him on the road to revolutionizing communication. In 1971, Sampson, alongside George H. Miley, co-invented a device called the gamma electric cell. This device had the ability to convert high-energy gamma radiation into usable electrical energy. Though the invention was originally designed for use in nuclear power generation and deep space exploration, it contained a principle far greater in its potential reach. It was the first technology that provided a way to harness electromagnetic radiation into a portable power source. The patent filed by Sampson described an energy cell that did not depend on sunlight, heat, or mechanical movement, but could produce power directly from radiation. In the grand narrative of technological development, this marked a turning point. Without this innovation, there would have been no practical way to create truly wireless communication systems that could sustain themselves without being tethered to fixed power sources. It is important to note that Sampson never claimed to have built the first fully functional handheld mobile phone. However, his invention laid the technological foundation that others would later exploit and commercialize.
See, that others were later to exploit and commercialize. So if it hadn't been for this man's invention, the groundwork that he laid, there wouldn't have been there wouldn't have been a cell phone. There wouldn't have been portable cell phones. We'd still be using rotary phones and landlines in order to be able to communicate. All right? I just want to go. I want to go to Job 9:24, and even though I've brought this out before, it's just an example of what we're seeing on how the wicked are in control of this world and are able to capitalize and monopolize the things that they do, such as this man's invention. All right, it says, Job 9:24, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. All right, he covereth the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he? And when it talks about covering the faces of the judges, this is an example. This is an example of iconoclasm. And I want to go to Google and look up iconoclasm. It says iconoclasm literally means image breaking and refers to a recurring historical impulse to break or destroy images for religious or political reasons. And in this case, that's what it is, a political reason, because it was they didn't want a so-called black man to be able to have an invention and a patent. Even though he did go on to patent it, it was still capitalized on, all right, and commercialized by Esau Edom, the so-called white man. It says, for example, in ancient Egypt, the carved visages of some pharaohs were obliterated by their successors during the French Revolution. Images of kings were defaced. All right, and I'm just going to leave that there because, like I said, this is an example of a type of iconoclasm. All right, but by taking this man's invention and furthering it, and you know that he wasn't properly paid and wasn't properly compensated for his inventions and what his inventions laid the groundwork for. I'm going to let this continue to play.
Enabling the practical conversion of energy for portable systems, Sampson essentially provided the building blocks upon which cellular communication networks could rest. Without the gamma electric cell, the dream of a phone untethered to wires, capable of transmitting signals across distances, would have been delayed by decades. In this sense, Sampson's contribution can be viewed as the hidden prototype, the unseen first stage of the mobile revolution. The narrative of Martin Cooper making the first mobile call in 1973 has been retold countless times in history books, news articles, and corporate advertisements. Yet seldom do these accounts acknowledge that Cooper's...
All right, and he says this man Cooper, who made the first cell phone call in 1973, has been in history books and has been brought out many times over in the world. But how many times have you heard of Henry Thomas Sampson Jr.? So you know that he wasn't properly compensated for what his inventions, his contributions. Like I said, he made it possible for the wireless phone to even come about. I'm gonna let this continue to play.
Achievement was not an isolated moment of genius, but the result of a long lineage of technological breakthroughs, many of which were pioneered by black inventors whose names history has erased. Sampson's work is a glaring example. His patent predated the Motorola demonstration by 2 years, and though his invention was not directly marketed as a consumer cell phone, The conceptual leap from his radiation to electric conversion to mobile energy transmission was not far. This is why many historians and technology scholars today recognize Henry Sampson as one of the overlooked founding fathers of mobile communication. To understand why his contributions were buried, one must consider the historical context of black inventors in America. Throughout the 19th and 20th centuries, African American inventors faced systemic barriers that prevented them from receiving recognition, funding, or protection for their innovations. Figures like Garrett Morgan, who...
See, that's just a nice way of being able to say, because of the wicked being in control, they were able to say who's going to take credit for what inventions and which ones inventions that they would just take and steal and make use of. But I'm going to let this continue to play.
Who invented the traffic light in Granville Woods, who developed numerous railway telecommunication devices, were often stripped of credit or had their work attributed to white inventors. Henry Sampson, though more academically credentialed than many before him, was not immune to this pattern. Working in government research institutions and corporate laboratories, his role was minimized in public narratives while white engineers and executives were elevated as the sole pioneers of mobile communication.
So it says that Mr. Sampson was immune to it. He had grown accustomed to it. He already knew how it was going to go, but that didn't deter him. He kept going. He kept getting degrees. He kept inventing. And even though it took some time for it to finally come to light, it did come to light that this man is responsible for laying the groundwork. It's just like that Bruce Hornsby song. That's just the way it is. He knew that's just the way it is. But it didn't deter him. He kept on doing what it is he set out to do. And I made a little, I wanted to make a little comparison here. Because I know that he was not properly compensated for all his inventions, all the things that he brought to the forefront. I went into Google and took a look at Henry Thomas Sampson Jr.'s net worth at the time of his death. And I think these are conflicting dates according with his death, because I think later on in this video it's going to say that he died in 2015, but in Google it says his personal net worth was $400 million at the time. And maybe it's not saying at the time of his death. It said at his death in 1993, but it says his net worth was $400 million. All right, so while that sounds like a great deal of money, you know that's not what he should have been worth at the time of his death, for his contribution, for his inventions, for what he has done. And the reason I'm saying that is because I kind of took a look at Steve Jobs' net worth. Now, Steve Jobs wasn't the first one to come up with the invention of making a cell phone. He came out with the iPhone and the Mac computer. And I wanted to make a comparison just to see what someone who came along later and took and built upon the groundwork of Henry Thomas Sampson Jr. and see what he was able to accumulate and mass through during his life. Let me just take a look. It says in 1976, co-founders Apple in his family's garage with Steve Wozniak and introduces the Apple I computer. This is in 1983. Let's see. It says Steve Jobs did not invent most of the technologies his companies developed, but he was a co-creator and visionary who significantly influenced the development of the Apple II, the Macintosh, the iPod, the iPhone, and the iPad. And all right, I'm just want to drop down here and take a look to see what his net worth was at the time of death, because you can see he was not the sole inventor of these things. He had like I said, the groundwork had already been laid for him because of the inventions of Henry Thomas Sampson Jr. All right, it says Steve Jobs' net worth at the time of his death in 2011 was approximately $10.2 billion, primarily from his large shareholding in the Walt Disney Company, acquired when Disney purchased Pixar. He had held a relatively small stake in Apple at the time, but his Disney shares constituted the bulk of his fortune. So his net worth was $10.2 billion. That's quite a bit of difference between $400 million for Henry Thomas Sampson Jr. and what Steve Jobs came along to amass in his life, just because he built upon an invention that made it possible for any of these wireless technologies to come about. So 10.2 billion and 400 million. That's a big difference. All right. So you know that this man wasn't properly compensated and wasn't paid exact what his invention was worth. It's like I said, he laid the groundwork for it, for all these inventions that later came about. But I'm going to let this continue to play just about 4 more minutes.
What makes Sampson's story even more remarkable is that he did not stop at one invention. Throughout his career, he filed several patents in energy conversion, rocket propulsion, and nuclear reactor technology. He also became an advocate for Black participation in science and engineering, mentoring young students, and pushing for greater inclusion in fields that had long excluded African Americans. His life demonstrates that the struggle for recognition is not just about the celebration of one invention, but about acknowledging the centuries of contributions made by Black minds that have fueled global progress. There is a deeper irony in the way Sampson's name has been nearly erased from the mainstream history of the cell phone. In today's world, mobile phones have become more than tools of communication. They are lifelines, status symbols, and even political weapons. Movements such as Black Lives Matter were able to capture global attention largely because ordinary people had cell phones capable of recording injustice in real time. Yet the very technology that gave a voice to the oppressed around the world owes its roots to a Black inventor whose own voice was silenced in the historical record. This erasure mirrors the larger pattern of how Black contributions to science, culture, and politics are systematically obscured, even as the world continues to benefit from them. Some skeptics argue that Henry Sampson did not invent the cell phone in the literal sense, pointing instead to Motorola's engineers. This is technically true if one defines invention strictly as the assembly of a commercial consumer product. But to frame the story this way is to miss the larger point about innovation. Every technological leap is built upon a chain of earlier breakthroughs, and Sampson's gamma electric cell is one of the crucial links in that chain.
This is John chapter 10 and verse 10. Says, "The thief cometh not but for to steal and to kill and to destroy." And this is in red letters, so this is Yahweh Shai speaking. It says, "I am come that they might have life and that they might have it more abundantly." So this is an example how the thief is doing, the thief being Esau Edom, doing what his nature is, to kill, to steal, and to destroy. But when Yahweh Shai returns and establishes his kingdom here on earth, the righteous are going to be in rulership. The righteous are going to be in the positions to make sure that righteousness permeates this planet. I'm going to let this continue to play, and then I just have one more precept, and that'll be the end.
His role is to suggest that the raw energy required to make mobile phones portable appeared out of thin air. In reality, Sampson's discovery was the missing piece that made later inventions possible. By the time of his passing in 2015, Henry Sampson had accumulated a career filled with accomplishments, honors, and recognition within scientific circles, though his name still remained largely absent from popular narratives about cell phones. Today, there is a growing movement to restore his legacy, not only to give credit where it is due, but also to inspire future generations of Black inventors who continue to fight for recognition in a world where systemic barriers still persist. Sampson's life is proof that genius cannot be bound by race, though history often tries to conceal it. The story of the Black inventor who created the first cell phone prototype is, in many ways, the story of America itself, an America that has always thrived on the ingenuity of its Black citizens while simultaneously working to erase their contributions. To reclaim Sampson's place in history is to reclaim the truth about how innovation actually works, not as the singular achievement of a few celebrated names, but as a collective journey where overlooked pioneers like Henry Sampson carried humanity forward. The next time you hold a cell phone in your hand, consider not just the company logo on its back, but the forgotten genius whose invention decades ago made such a miracle possible.
This is Proverbs 29 and verse 2, and I want to read this one in the NLT. It says, when the godly are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked are in power, they groan. And that's just building upon what I said earlier in the previous verse that I brought up. That when Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai returns to this earth, the rulership is going to be set up under the righteous. And you're going to see the people rejoice. You're going to see all the nations are going to rejoice because you're going to see a righteous rulership. Unlike today where you see the people groaning. You see the people in uproar because the wicked are in positions of authority right now and they're ruling this planet in all wickedness. But it's about to come to an end. And I pray that this has been edifying to the listener. And I'm going to leave that right there at this for now. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rakah Kodesh. Shalom.